Hello everybody, welcome back to Kerbal Space Program. We're back in Principia here, and we're going to do a Rendezvous tutorial using Principia. It can be a bit different to the stock game, so I wanted to create this tutorial to help players learn how to do this with the mod. There was a few suggestions for this, so hopefully this is useful to the people who asked. Let's jump right in. If you're familiar with Rendezvous, you should know that the inclination is very important. So let's just have a look at our inclination relative to the target vehicle. And to do that, we're going to click select target vessel on Principia here. And then we're going to find our target vessel. And today it's just going to be another satellite here. And you can see our orbit relative to the target's orbit here. Now, obviously we're in a bit of an inclined orbit compared to our target. So we need to change that. And that doesn't change from normal Kerbal Space Program, but the reference frame we're going to use is going to change, and that's just going to make it a bit clearer for us what that's going to look like from the target's perspective. So you want to click plotting frame selection, and because we've set a target, it's going to come up in our menu here. We're going to click the button here, Target's Earth Orbit Reference Frame, and this is what our orbit now looks like on the map screen, and this is just our trajectory relative to the target. So as we follow the target around, we're in a similar altitude orbit, so we're not going to be getting any closer or further away from it, which means it's just going to be a very straight line here. But because our inclination is different, we're going to be moving up and down, so to speak, relative to the target. So the first thing we want to do is basically flatten this line. And to do that, it's just the same as a regular Kerbal Space Program. We're going to use the normal and anti-normal directions on MechJeb here. But if you're not sure, it also looks like this. It's these triangular nodes here, and they change your inclination. If you're not sure how that works, I would really advise you to not be using Principia. Get your fundamentals down in normal Kerbal Space Program first, because this all translates over. Now, when you're doing an inclination match in Principia, first off I recommend the MechJeb orbit info. It's very handy. You can see it there. We've got a 2.99 degree relative inclination. And the other thing to consider in this scenario is because of Principia's physics model, we have things like orbital precession, and that just means that orbits in satellites, in an inclined orbit relative to the equator will experience precession around that orbit, and that just means the inclination shifts around the Earth over time due to the gravitational pull. We're just going to perform this maneuver now. We're going to get the engine on and we're going to fix this up, and you can see as I burn normal, the relative movement changes. We're flattening that movement because we're changing our inclinations. If we change to this, you can see our inclinations flattening, just like in normal Kerbal Space Program. And from the other satellite's perspective, this is what that looks like looking at our craft and its trajectory relative to our target vehicle. We're going to come around for another pass here because I started that a bit late. So you can see that's it now. It's much more flat than before, as you can see, but we just want to get that last couple of degrees, so we're going to do that. And to do that, we're just going to go around to the ascending node, go anti-normal, and fix it up. And you can see when I flatten that out, the movement relative to the spacecraft has changed. And we can see a bit clearer whether we're moving towards or away from our target vehicle. I'm actually moving slightly away by the looks of it, because we're processing this way. And that is beautiful. This is the ideal scenario here. A very flat line. This is what we like. It's going to be flat because we're in a very similar altitude orbit, and we've just matched the inclination. Now, obviously, the satellite's ahead of us by almost 180 degrees. I'd say that's 120 degrees. So you want to be in a lower orbit, and we all know how to do that in Kerbal Space Program, I hope. We're just going to burn retrograde. So we're going to put ourselves in a 90 by 90 kilometer orbit here. And you can see how that changes our relative velocity to the target. Because we're lowering our orbit, increasing our orbital speed, our trajectory here is pushing out this way towards the target because we're lowering into a higher speed orbit, and that means relative to our target here we're moving towards it. So that's what that's showing there. And once you've done this, you can actually see your periapsis at the top of the loops here, and the your apoapsis at the top of the loops there, and your periapsis is the bottom of these sort of troughs here. So we're going to go to our periapsis and then flatten this out again so we can quickly reach our target vehicle. So as you'll see, when we come to our periapsis, you'll see it's at the bottom of these long sort of trenches or troughs or whatever you want to call them. There we go. And sometimes this happens, especially when you're in lower altitude orbits. The game just doesn't like it, so it's going to switch off of your target. It doesn't like doing that for some reason, but you can see the line starts to flatten out again here, as you can see, and that's because our orbit is now less eccentric, so relative to the spacecraft it's just looking like it's going to fly past a lower orbit essentially. So this is still in our orbit relative to our target vehicle, and you can see it's just going to shoot past it because we're in a lower orbit than it, and that's not dipping into the line here, which means that it's in a very stable, not eccentric orbit above our orbit in terms of altitude, right? And because our inclinations are fairly similar, the lateral movement up and down here relative to the target is not very pronounced whatsoever. It's quite hard to see. So what we're going to do is stop here, because we're in such a circular orbit, it doesn't really matter where, and we can see the effect of burning prograde now. So we're going to burn prograde like this, and that's going to bring up those loops again because our apoapsis will increase, and you can see each of these peaks is now an apoapsis on our orbit, and what we're trying to do really is match an apoapsis to where the target is, and we've got one here, 2,000, 1,000 meters. Oh, that's perfect. 500 meters, we'll go with that. So you can see our trajectory now relative to our target is going to follow it across still, because we're in a lower orbit still for most of the orbit, but every apoapsis here is just touching a point, and basically we want to get our apoapsis to touch a point where the vehicle's also going to meet us, which is right here. You can do maneuver nodes to do this. Once you've done it enough times, you'll get an intuition of when to just burn prograde, and you won't need to do maneuver nodes. Alright, so once you've got an apoapsis meeting the target vehicle, and you've got a good predicted target approach, we can just time warp to that target approach. So let's do that, and you can see now we're reaching our apoapsis. And at some point near our apoapsis we have our nearest approach, which is about 500 meters, and this will all be very familiar if you've done Rendezvous before now that you're close to your target vehicle. Of course it's going to happen in the dark. I always manage to arrange these so we're meeting our vehicle in the dark, but that's fine. We're just going to nullify our relative velocity. Now in normal Kerbal Space Program you can do it via the buttons here. I like using MechJeb. You just click target here, relative velocity minus, and you burn the engine, and that's going to bring our relative velocity down, and you'll see that matches with the Principia trajectory projection here relative to our target vehicle. So we're just I'm going to burn a bit harder. You can see our speed relative to our target vehicle now is coming down and down and down, so that means this precession away from the vehicle is going to be slower and slower and slower. I want to be able to see this during the day, so I'm just going to kill rotation here and follow it manually because it's the best way to do it, I find, because once you get to these low speeds, any small deviance can be quite annoying. And you can see our relative velocity is 0, so we're effectively floating next to it, and that's reflected in the Principia relative trajectory here. It's so short because we're not moving drastically further or closer to it. So we'll get to sunrise here. I've drifted a little bit far away, but that's fine. We can just burn towards the target again and fix that, no problem. It's about 300 meters. We'll get it to 300 meters and then I'll nullify the relative velocity once we get to that point. So we're coming towards the target again. At this point, we can start looking out for it. With this mod, it's quite easy to spot your target, because the HUD heads-up display will show you. There it is. So I recommend this mod for stuff like this, because It's quite hard to see your target sometimes, but it's there. You can see it there. And we can just burn towards it again. No RCS on this thing, so it's a bit trickier. If you're using a reaction control system, I highly advise using that for this part of the flight because it just makes controlling your approach much easier. But you can see I'm not having much trouble with this regardless. You can see we're getting closer to our target now. And this is good as well because you can actually set your prograde marker onto the target and that means you'll be moving towards it precisely. So I do recommend the Kerbal heads-up display mod. It is this one here, Nav HUD. It's awesome. But here's our target. And if I had RCS and a docking port, we could now dock, do all the things I want to do with the satellites. Let's just get that relative velocity down to 0 if I can. There we go. Here we are. Let's extend our antenna just for the vibes. And we can hang out in space together now. Here we are. Best friends forever. That's how you rendezvous in Principia. In my opinion, it's actually a little bit easier than in stock because I think the reference frames make it clear that actually you can see where your trajectory is relative to the target vehicle, and it just makes those corrections a bit easier. And you know, oh, I'm this close to it. I can see my trajectory overlap with it, so I know I'm going to get close. I think it's great personally, so I would recommend trying out Rendezvous with Principia because I found it to be very, very useful indeed. And hopefully this guide was very, very useful. Let me know what else you want to see. I plan to cover Lagrange points in a showcase video, and I plan to cover how to go interplanetary in another tutorial video. I'll also have some docking tutorials on the stock game coming up, as well as how to land on the moon as well and other celestial bodies, because that could be quite a challenge for beginners in the stock game too. So there's a bunch of tutorials coming up. I do plan on covering other space simulator games. I've seen a few cool ones be announced. There's one where you're piloting a spacecraft around Titan as like a sort of delivery guy, and that uses orbital mechanics. So I might cover these games that do similar things because it's very much within the wheelhouse of this channel. So keep an eye out for those as well. When these games come out, I'll cover them if I can. So yeah, plenty more stuff to come, more tutorials to come. Any more suggestions, I'm open to them. Hopefully this one was useful, and I'll stop rambling and end the video. See you later, guys.